Welcome, everyone. This is the PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating Podcast. Here we chat about all things boating with marine industry professionals and enthusiasts who spend all the time they can out on the water.
Hi, this is Tonia Becker, and I'm your host for today's episode of PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating. I'm joined by my guest, Garrett Paquette, a professional angler who just closed out his season on the 2021 Bassmaster Elite Series. Garrett is getting ready to take delivery of a new boat, so that's really exciting. We're going to talk today about what he bought and how he's rigging it, including his new electronics configuration. So without any more preamble, what did you buy, Garrett?
Yeah, so for next year, 2022 season of fishing, I'm actually using pretty much the same setup as I had last year. I'm gonna have a Bass Cat Cougar FTD. I was really happy with that boat. It was really it suited what I needed on the water. And it's going to look very similar. I'm going to have a Mercury 250 Pro XS 4-stroke on the back. I'm going to have it decked out with Humminbird, Minn Kota products, all that good stuff. So I'm really excited. I know it's coming, I think, in like 3 or 4 weeks here. So I'm chomping at the bit to get it in and start working on it.
That's awesome. So what is it about the Bass Cat Cougar or Bass Cats in general that tournament fishing anglers like?
Yeah. So, I mean, one, Bass Cat is kind of known in the industry as being a real quality boat builder, which obviously for anyone that's buying a boat, that is something that you look for. You don't want it to fall apart after being on the water for a week. So Bass Cat's really quality. That's a big deal. That's especially important where I live, since I'm in the north here in Michigan. We have a lot of big waves. And if your boat's not ready to handle that, it'll fall apart very fast. I mean, I've seen some pretty bad things up here with bass boats. So that's kind of the first reason of it. And then for what I do, I mean, I'm really fishing one-man fishing tournaments. It has everything I need. It has a good amount of storage. It's laid out nice. It's easy to get to my things. But it's a fast boat, which in our tournament situations, it can be important. We might be racing to the same spot, and if you beat somebody there and you're able to claim the spot and fish it how you want to, that could be the difference of thousands of dollars. So speed is a factor, quality of the build, like I said, and just having it laid out the way I want to. I mean, I'm a guy that carries a lot of tackle. I carry a bunch of rods. I like to be over prepared on the water, and the boat can fit what I want to put in it. So that's all I can really ask for in a boat.
I think you mentioned that the boat will include a Mercury 250 Pro XS, right? So that engine has a real wide open throttle, high performance.
Yep, correct.
Kind of engine,
yep.
Right?
Yeah, yep. They run at a high RPM. They run like over 6,000 RPMs at top speed, and it's been this will be my third one. I'm sorry, this will be my fourth one that I've had now, and I've had minimal problems. I mean, I've never had one blown. I don't even know of someone that's had one to blow up, actually, which, I mean, and that's all the manufacturers. Now the engines are getting so good and so reliable, which is a plus. But that it's good on gas. It's a 4-stroke. It's reliable. It's strong. It's quick. That's pretty much what we're looking for. We need something that's going to get us to the spot and back. And as long as I turn the key and it goes, I'm happy.
And I think on the new boat, there's some minor like fit and finish type of feature upgrades. Probably, I mean, like you said, nothing radically new, but a couple little. Bass Cat seems to be really focused on detailing out the features and so forth. Do you know of anything new on that front, or?
Yeah. So it seems like every time I get a boat, it's a little bit of a surprise, which is cool because you always get something new and you're like, oh, I didn't know this was going to have this. The one thing I saw, and I think it'll be on my model, is a lightning strike detector, which is pretty cool. For one, I'm terrified of lightning on the water. So I guess it senses static electricity up to like 20 miles out, and it starts alerting you, and then it starts beeping louder and louder as it comes close, or alerting you, or however it does it. So I saw that could be on the models. And then they just do, like, cosmetically, they're always kind of upgrading and making things look better, changing the color of their panels and stuff like that, and going, from steel to whatever they deem looks the best. So it's always, those smaller details, it's always cool, because we're getting like the earlier models of boat, obviously, for this year. So there's not a lot of 22 boats that I've seen. So you kind of take the cover off, and usually you are pleasantly surprised with a couple of things. So hopefully that's the case again this year.
I'm sure it will be. So you're a guy that's very attentive And I don't know that creative is the right word, but attentive to your electronics setup, and you fish all Humminbird, which is awesome. What is the new configuration going to be like?
Yeah, so this year it'll look a lot like last year. I've always ran two depth finders at the console, and last year or this year that we're just finishing here, I went to one 15-inch screen, which is really big. It's the biggest Solix that Humminbird offers, and I really like that. Instead of normally I do 212s, I did the 115 and I was happy. So I'm gonna stick with that again. I'm gonna do 115 there. It's not overpowering. Like I think if you did 215s, it'd be almost too much. It might be hard to see and things like that. So the one's fine for me. And then on the front of the boat, I'm going to have a 10-inch Humminbird Solix and then two 12-inch units. So it'll be pretty jam-packed up there. But each screen has its own purpose. The one 10-inch Solix I'll use for mapping and my sonar, just being able to see where I am in the lake and then what's straight under the boat. And then the two 12 inches, one will be dedicated for 360 mega imaging. And then the other one will be the new Mega Live, the forward transducer from Humminbird. So those units, nothing will ever change up there. They're just going to have their own designated job, I guess, for me.
So the Mega Live is new. I think that you first tried it out in June or so of this past season.
I got it in June sometime.
And what's that all about? And how does it work? And do you like it?
Yeah. So typically in our fishing, we have sonars that go straight down, straight under the boat. That's how you see your depth. We've had them on the trolling motor up front. We've had them on the back of the boat. We've had them through hull. We've got a lot of 2D sonars, and then more recently we've had the new side imaging transducers, which is cool. It shoots out and you can see what's to the side, and the 360 same thing. You can see all around. But this Mega Live imaging it's a forward sonar that's going to be on the trolling motor. And it's truly live. Like when I turn the trolling motor head, it'll shoot out however far I want it. I've been using it about 100 feet, but it's a straight beam and it's an instant return. So if there's fish out there that are 5 feet down, 50 feet away from the boat, I can see them and I can watch them swim and I can throw my lure to it and watch how the fish chases after the lure. And when he bites it, it's a crazy new technology. So instead of seeing the fish that we were seeing traditionally straight under the boat, now we're seeing them way out in front of the boat, and where it's a lot easier to catch those fish, obviously, because they're not feeling the boat on top of them. We're kind of getting to them first now. So it's the newest and the greatest technology, and a lot of guys are myself included, are catching fish because of it.
So I know that you're pretty particular about how you handle wiring your electronics. Or I guess not picky, but mindful, right?
No, picky.
How are you approaching wiring this new setup? You're picky. Okay, fair enough. Picky. So how are you approaching this setup wiring wise?
So for me, and I think it's one of the most, and it's becoming talked about more, but it is still probably the most underrated thing about your electronics. You can go out there and buy all the nicest graphs and put them on your boat, but if you're not feeding the proper voltage to them, you're kind of hindering yourself. I mean, they're not going to perform the way they are or the way that they should, and they might not be as clear. They might have issues. So to me, it's critical, absolutely critical, to make sure I have them wired the most efficient way. And to me, that's straight to the battery. So I actually run two batteries for electronics. One is a cranking battery that has my engine on it and my bilge pumps and live wells and just everything that it takes to operate a boat. And Bass Cat has one 6-gauge wire coming off of that battery, which I will put on my 15-inch unit at the console. And 6-gauge that's a really big wire for electronic. That's overkill, but that's what you want. You want to have the biggest wire you can get. So I'll have that. That'll be on my cranking battery. And then for the graphs on the front of the boat, the 3 Solixes up there, I actually put in another battery just for that. So I put in a Dakota lithium 12-volt battery, 100 amp hour size. It's equivalent to like a 31 size AGM. And I will run that battery just straight to those 3 graphs on its own separate charger. It won't be linked into the engine or anything. It's dedicated strictly for 3 graphs. And that's what I ran last year. And that was a really successful setup for me. Like, I mean, you can run 4 units or 5 units off of a cranking battery with your engine, but there are times that you might be in a tough spot. Like, I mean, no matter how good the battery is, you might, if you don't turn your engine on for 12 hours and charge it, it might be tough to turn it over. So I like kind of breaking that up and putting those 3 units on a separate battery for me.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense. And how long do this battery last? I mean, the lithium one that you'll use up front.
Yeah, the lithium one, it's and I know exactly, since I killed it last year because we were at a hotel and our boats weren't getting charged and we didn't know it. I ran that thing of runtime with 3 units. It was like 25 or 26 hours straight, and that is not getting a charge. So that's pretty impressive for 3 screens, 26 hours. And if you're charging your boat every night, then you'll never have a problem with it dying. So I was really, really impressed with that battery.
And I think you mentioned before when you and I were chatting that you changed the battery configuration on your trolling motor.
Yep, I did this
year. The 36 volt instead of
correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Last year I ran.
So what's that going to be? That'll be a third.
Yeah. Yep. Last year I ran I ran those 12 volt batteries, and I got a 36 volt Minn Kota Ultra. So I ran 3 12 volt batteries, the 100 amp hour size again, and that was really good for me. But this year we're going to try to take a little bit more weight out of the boat, and I'm going to run, actually, instead of 3 12 volt batteries, 1 36 volt battery. And I think that battery weighs like 60 pounds, which is, that's heavy. But to think about it, a normal 12 volt lead acid or AGM, it weighs 60 pounds. So I'm literally taking out 2/3 of the weight of your batteries typically in my boat. So I'm really excited about that, to run that one big giant 36 volt battery and being done with it. Just having one battery back there and having a ton of extra space.
That's right. I mean, 120 pounds is a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot of weight.
It's almost like a small person.
You can pack a lot more rods.
Exactly.
So if I understand correctly, just back to how you're wiring the graphs up front, you're using a separate inline fuse for each of the graphs up front. Is that right? That
is correct. Yep. And I do this. I go a little overkill with this process. Most people just have fuses at the battery on their wire, which is perfectly fine. They might have like a 15 amp fuse or something back there. Obviously, you want to protect your battery if a graph is shorting out. You want to protect your wires. You don't want anything to melt or anything to catch on fire. That's, boating 101. You want to be safe, have fuses. But what I will do is I will put an inline fuse at the front of the boat on each unit. So I'll have 3 of them up there, 1 dedicated on each power harness for the graph themselves. And what that does for me is it's an extra security blanket. If a graph up front is kind of freaking out or acting up, it just shuts it down right there. It doesn't go to the battery, it doesn't go to that back fuse. And it makes it easy for me. So instead of the back fuse tripping and me trying to figure out, what unit is having an issue, what's going on, I can diagnose things a lot faster by going up front and saying, oh, wow, okay, it's this fuse, it's on this unit. Whether you got to get a new unit or whatever you have to do, then at least to where to diagnose your problem. So I'm all for adding fuses where you can. Makes your life easier, and of course it makes you safer.
Have you seen anglers out there that don't really pay as much attention as you do to how they're wiring this stuff? And I mean, have you seen them have problems? And
yeah, definitely. I mean, guys are becoming hip to it. Like, I feel like I was making wiring harnesses before it was a cool thing to do. I was like the only guy doing it. And now we got companies making them and supplying them and stuff like that. So guys don't have to work as hard to get a good setup, which is nice. I kind of, not nice for me. Everyone's caught up, but yeah, you definitely see it. I mean, there's still some guys, they want to plug it into, or they want to run their graphs into their bilge pump wires or whatever the pre-run, cheap wire from some of these manufacturers are. And that's just a big mistake. You're going to kill your batteries possibly faster. You're not going to have the performance out of your electronics. It's just, it's kind of amazing that you're willing to spend this much money on some of these electronics. You might as well take the next step and make sure they're going to work right and not affect your day in a negative way on the water. So yeah, there are still some guys that definitely, don't care to. And there's guys that, I mean, quite honestly, when they're fishing, they're not as into the units and the electronics part of the sport, so they don't care, and that's fine. But if it's something that you want to help increase your odds while you're fishing, you want to go above and beyond and make sure everything's wired properly and everything's set up the way it should be.
Yeah, I mean, you and I've talked about this a lot of times. I mean, fishing has become to your point, not for every angler. I mean, but for a lot of people, more and more like a video game, like just extremely electronics intensive to be able to maintain a competitive edge. And you don't implement that correctly and everything goes down in the middle of a tournament when there's money on the line. That's a problem.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's kind of crazy to think the sports turn this way. But instead of refusing it and, not wanting to adapt, you might as well embrace it and try to learn them and have fun with it. Cause they do at times, not all the times, but there are a lot of times where if you pay attention to your electronics and they're functioning properly, you will catch more fish. And at the end of the day, we're out there and we want to have fun, and what's more fun in fishing than actually catching fish. So
this kind of, leads like this new approach to, tournament fishing, especially at the professional level, kind of leads to the next, I guess, generation the next generation kind of competitive advantage, which is, I think, just being physically fit. I mean, we haven't thought of anglers, I don't think, as athletes until probably, quite recently. I mean, just the same thing happened in auto sports. I mean, we thought of those guys as great drivers, but not as athletes necessarily. But today, I mean, auto racers are incredible athletes. And I think the same thing is happening in fishing as well. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And another good example would be golf. I mean, Tiger Woods kind of revolutionized the sport by being real in shape and taking it to the next level. But I do see that in fishing. It's starting to happen. There are some guys that are paying attention to fitness, and I like to think I'm included in that. I spend a lot of my off season trying to work out and do yoga and run and all that stuff. Anything to just be able to make myself go on the water for a long day and not get tired, not break down physically, not have to worry about whether I could go to the next spot because my back's hurting, things like that. And it's, we put in a lot of long days. People think it's fishing and it's relaxing and all that, but there's times we're out there for 15 hours straight standing up. We're in the hot sun. The waves are big. They're beating on our back. And it is a very physical thing at times. And if you could stay out there and work harder for longer, you should have an advantage over the guys that can't. So I think that's definitely where the sport's going. And it'll the guys that are willing to put in that extra work, you're going to see it in the results. That's
interesting. I of course, that's true in terms of being on your feet for so long and the waves. I mean, that requires a lot of core strength. Of course that's the case. I just didn't really think of that. But without core strength, doing stuff like that, you're going to have a lot of back problems and 26 other problems as well. So good. Well, this was great, Garrett. I really enjoyed learning, about the new boat, hearing about the new boat and how you're going to set it up. So I encourage all of our listeners to follow Garrett and his adventures on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram, Garrett can be found at G Paquette Fishing, and on Facebook at Garrett Paquette Fishing. Just do that search for Garrett Paquette Fishing. And thanks again, Garrett. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it always.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the PartsVu Xchange Talks Boating Podcast. Are you thinking about upgrading your boat's navigation? Or are you interested in the latest marine technology? Check out our wide selection of GPS navigation and fish finder units from leading marine brands like Garmin, Humminbird, Ray Marine, and more at PartsVu.com. Use the coupon code PVTalksNav for 5% off your order, a special perk for our podcast listeners. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram for boating knowledge, to keep in touch with the PartsVu community, and for special sales and promotions. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and check out the show notes for the coupon code just mentioned, more information about PartsVu and the products we offer, as well as our boating blog, the PartsVu Exchange. And a big thanks to Minn for performing the original music featured within this podcast.